Hey guys, welcome back to this week's weekly vlog. If you're an independent artist, you're going to want to watch today for sure. I'm going to talk about independent radio promotion, Spotify, the ways that are worth it to promote your music, and the ways that aren't. So stick around. It's time for this week's weekly vlog. Let's do it. Hi everybody, and welcome back to this week's vlog. Hope everybody's had a great week so far and gearing up for the weekend. We're getting closer and closer to Christmas. All the Christmas decorations are up. We went out last night and took a small tour around Nashville and looked at a lot of the Christmas lights, and it's an exciting time of year. I know, me personally, Christmas is my favorite time of the year by far. Just the family and friends and the overall spirit. But I will say this, from a music business standpoint, it's also that time of year where you start really planning for next year. Because our business is dead pretty much right now. The charts all freeze here in about a week, so the record labels aren't in the middle of the hustle and bustle of doing what they normally do. So this is kind of the time of year where everybody just steps back, kind of takes a break and thinks about next year and really starts putting into place those plans of how to execute and how to do well next year and how to accomplish your goals. That being said, I know many of you are independent artists and you're sitting around thinking, okay, I want next year to be better than this year. And so what can I do with my music? How can I get my music out there more? Some of you have budgets that you're working with and you're thinking about, okay, how do I allocate my budget to make sure that I can take my music as far as it can possibly go next year? That's the purpose of this week's vlog. If you're an independent artist, you're going to want to pay close attention because this week I'm going to talk about the ways and things that you can do to promote your music, to get your music out there, to get your brand out there that are worth it. On the other side of that coin, we're going to talk about the ways that are not worth it and quite frankly are just complete ripoffs. And a lot of you artists know, especially here in Nashville and Los Angeles, anywhere else, there's no real shortage of people with their hand out looking to help independent artists. But we're going to kind of talk about some of those things today and hopefully give you some advice and get you going into 2018 strong and doing things on your music's behalf that really are meaningful and that are worth the passion and the financial resources and the time that it takes to commit to doing these things. First thing I want to talk about is independent radio promotion. It is one of those things where you've really got to start to learn, and many of you have heard me say this in the past, to separate fame from success. And that's a hard thing to do because as an artist, you want to see your name in print. You want to see your name next to that chart position with your title and your name there because you think it brings you some sort of stature in it, and it brings you some sort of recognition that you didn't have, or it validates you as an artist. So many of you go out and you find independent radio promoters to work your singles to radio, to the independent charts, and some of you even do work the Billboard and media-based charts. But I want to break this down a little bit and talk about, is that really worth it? First of all, let's start, what is independent radio promotion? That is where an independent artist will hire an independent radio promoter to work their single to radio to get airplay, and hopefully that airplay leads to enough airplay that you get on the charts. Here's the problem with that. The way that works is any independent radio promoter, they charge anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 for what they call the life of the record. I have yet to ever meet an independent radio promoter that thinks that the life of a record lasts beyond 12 weeks. For those of you that have been down this road, you know, you pay the independent radio promoter and then about 12 weeks, no matter where you're at, it's like, I think it's time to come with another single. What he's really saying is it's time for you to send me another check because that's really how that works. I kind of want to break this down, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I've told you before, I'll always tell you the truth, and that is the utmost importance. First two things, as an independent artist, especially in the country format, the Music Row chart is meaningless. It is completely unrespected in our industry. Same thing goes for the New Music Weekly chart. They mean nothing. Nothing whatsoever. Matter of fact, they mean less than nothing because the powers that be and the people that you really want to get the attention to, they look down on those charts. Success on those charts is not going to get you anywhere. So if you pay an independent radio promoter $5,500, $6,500 to work your single to the radio stations that report to Music Row magazine or to New Music Weekly, you're wasting your money. Because here's how that works. The last time I looked, let's take the Music Row chart. The last time I looked at it had 110 reporting stations. Now, the bottom quarter of those, 20, 30 stations, they get no love from the major labels whatsoever. The major labels aren't sending them product. They're not sending their artists by those radio stations. So anytime they feel like they're being worked, they kind of get off on that a little bit. They like thinking that they're important in the process. And these are all small market radio stations, and a lot of them in places that you've never heard of. Now, I'm not talking badly about the radio stations because I love those radio stations. I think they serve an important purpose. Many of them play music that you won't hear in the major, large, and medium market stations, and you get exposed to a lot of new music, and that's a great thing. But if it can't turn into something, then it doesn't really mean much. So that lower quarter of stations, they're going to play a lot of whatever the individual radio promoter is promoting because they like having that contact with somebody in the industry. The next kind of quarter of those stations are stations built up of maybe 20 to 30, maybe 35 stations that particular independent radio promoter that you've hired has a very long-standing and good relationship with. So if you've paid that radio promoter to promote your single, he's probably going to get it played on those 30 to 45 radio stations because he has either a great relationship with the program director or music director at that particular radio station because they've spent years developing those relationships, or it's in such a small market that when they get a new single, they think they're supposed to play it, so they put it on the air. Here's where the problem starts to come in with that. When you look at the Music Row chart, well, pause that for a second. The rest of the top of that chart on the stations that report to the Music Row chart, they think they're Billboard and media base stations. So they replicate the playlists of the major and large market radio stations. And those stations do not play independent artists whatsoever, ever, under any circumstances. Matter of fact, it's a corporate mandate that they do not play independent artists. So you have no shot whatsoever of ever getting on those 30 to 35 stations that really matter that are in the Music Row panel. You're not ever going to get there. So what ultimately ends up happening is you've paid this independent radio promoter. They're going to go out and get it on 45, 50 stations. And yes, that single will probably chart, but it's going to chart somewhere in the 50s, maybe the 40s, sometimes the 30s. But here's the problem. It never turns into anything. It doesn't turn into more touring opportunities. It doesn't turn into sales. There is no publishing money that you're going to make from being on the Music Row charts. So if you're spending this money to get your name on that chart, for what? Right? If it doesn't turn into something successful, then being on the chart doesn't really matter, which means that you've wasted your money promoting your music to radio for the Music Row charts or the New Music Weekly chart. I can tell you this because I owned a record label, a successful record label. And we spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars thinking the way that most of you think. Think that, okay, we'll use those stations as like the minor leagues. And we'll put our single out and we'll hire a radio promotions person. That song will start going up the chart and other radio stations will see that it's climbing the chart and then they might start playing it. And then that never happens. I made the same mistake. Like I said, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and it turned into absolutely nothing. It turned into zero. What ends up happening is that you're paying for this independent radio promoter and you're using a lot of your budget to be able to do that when there are many other things that you could be using those resources for that actually do take your music, your brand, to another level and that gets you some sort of distinction. But the thing that you as the independent artist have to realize, and you have to really think about this, is you have to separate what you want as fame and what is achievable, which is success. If you ever really truly admit it to yourself, you want your name in that chart because we're all vain. You want to see your name on that chart because you think that means you're successful and that other people will see you as successful. Well, let me tell you, the people that matter, the only people that matter, that can take your career from where you are to where you want to be, they're not looking at the Music Row chart. They're not looking at the New Music Weekly chart. They could care less about you. They could care less about your single, right? If you're not on a major label, nobody cares. The only person that cares is you. So you've got to stop placating and playing up to the industry, thinking that if you do this and you do that, then the industry is going to notice you, because they're not. And here's the main reason. They're not looking for you. This illusion that you can go out there and create this buzz and they're going to come calling. You cannot create that buzz by paying an independent radio promoter to promote your music to radio stations in small markets that most of them don't even have venues to where you could turn that radio airplay into live concerts. When we had the record label, that's one thing that we looked at. We didn't really care about chart position. We cared about penetration and coverage. Okay, we may not be able to get airplay on this specific market, in this specific market, on this specific station, but we can look at the smaller stations that surround that station that would give us the same coverage area and then hopefully be able to book our acts in those venues. That was our approach to it. But here's the problem. When you take that approach, the venues that are in the larger markets, yes, those smaller radio stations may reach into that market, but they don't advertise with those small market stations. They don't listen to those small stations. They have no idea what's going on those small stations. They advertise, they partner with, and they do things with the biggest station in the market because they want to reach the most people. So one way that working the Music Row chart in those stations could work is if each one of those markets had a viable place for you to go play and book a show. And some of them do. When you get up to the larger of the small markets, there are some places. But here's where you run into there. And we always found this funny, and I know if you're an independent artist that you've heard this. Let's say you've got your song, you've paid the independent radio promoter, and he has your song spinning in City X. City X also happens to have a nightclub, a country nightclub, where they book bands every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. And you're thinking, hey, my single's playing on the local radio station. They have to know who I am. I'm going to call them and try to book a show. So you make that phone call. Oftentimes, here's what you hear on the back end of that phone call. The promoter tells you that, why would I pay you to come in and play at my club when I've got a string of local bands that'll come in and play for free, or basically free? And here you as the artist, you're thinking, I've got a single on in the radio. I'm hot stuff. I mean, you should pay me $2,500, $3,500 to come in and play because I've got a single on the radio. That means nothing to that local venue owner. Just because you have a single on the radio doesn't mean that people will pay to walk through the door to see you in concert. It's all about the money. Put yourself as the artist in the venue owner's shoes. In this small market, he knows, based on the past, that the same 200, 300, 400, 500 people are coming to his club every Friday and Saturday night, regardless of who's on stage. So why would he spend any more money to bring you in to play there because you've got a single playing on the local radio station when he can make more money by putting a local act on the stage that people actually do know and they see quite often and that kind of have a fan base in that community? So that's kind of how it works. That's why the chart position on the Music Row chart or the New Music Weekly chart, they never turn into anything for the artist. It's just a vanity thing. It's just being able to see your name on that chart. And if that's worth $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 to you, that's great, but I'm telling you, you'll stay right where you are forever. And approaching things from that standpoint will never get you further than where you are right now. Now, the difference is if you call that venue owner and you say, I really want to build a fan base. I've got a single plan on the local radio station that you advertise with. How much do you pay a local band on Friday night? He says, I pay them $500. You say, then I'll come in and I'll play for $500. That goes back to that sacrifice that we've talked about in previous vlogs. You have to be willing to sacrifice. Do whatever it takes to get you in a position. I've told you about an artist, Jake Dodds, that I just produced his new EP. That guy does not have a record deal and he doesn't have a single playing on any radio station in the country, but he plays 150 plus shows every year in major markets like Chicago, Denver, all over the place. Now they're in Roanoke, Virginia. They're all over because he was willing to put in the work and sacrifice to get himself to the next level. Now, he came to me, we produced a major label style EP, we're going to get him a record deal, and he's going to get that record deal because he put in the work and he did the sacrifice. A record label's going to love the fact that this guy already plays 150 to 180 shows a year in major markets. They're going to jump all over that. That means more to them than the fact that he's never had a single on the radio whatsoever. You've got to look at these things about not what you think will make you look good or take you to the next level, but focus on research and talking to people and finding out the ways that you yourself as an artist can take yourself to that next level and eliminate all the BS in between, like working your singles, paying thousands of dollars to independent radio promoters, to work your singles to radio stations that report to charts that don't matter and that nobody respects. I see it all the time on Facebook and on Instagram. This independent artist, I moved up 5 spots. I'm number 45 on the Music Row chart. Great. That means nothing to anybody but you and your radio promoter, because your radio promoter sees that means something to you, which means he thinks he can turn you into a revolving door. That, okay, we got up to number 45. Let's come with a new record now, a fresh record now that the radio stations know who you are, and I bet we can get it up into the 40s and into the 30s. Here's the problem. No chart position on the Music Row chart matters. None. It only matters to Music Row, the independent radio promoters, and you, the artist. It doesn't matter to the industry, because the farthest you can go is in the top 20. And even that doesn't mean anything. I'm telling you from experience. I had artists constantly in the top 20, even in the top 10. And it didn't matter. It didn't turn into booking live shows. It didn't turn into sales. You think you've got a single playing on the station, you're number 20 on the Music Row chart. That means it's spinning on 85 different stations in 85 different markets, and people are going to start downloading your single. It doesn't work that way. And you will not find a single artist that you can point to that will tell you that they made a successful and financially successful career from working the Music Row chart. It's not a great place to start. It's not a great place to finish. It's just not worth doing. I know that's tough to hear, but it's the truth. Let's get down to the brass tacks. There are only 2 charts that matter. That's the Billboard chart and the media-based chart. That's it. The indicator charts don't matter. The Music Row chart doesn't matter. New Music Weekly chart doesn't matter. Any of these smaller charts, they don't matter. The Billboard chart matters, and the media-based chart matters. And there are independent radio promoters that will work your singles to the Billboard charts and the media-based charts. But here's the problem. You'll never get high enough on those charts to make a difference. Why? Because you're an independent artist. Those top 30 slots are reserved for major label artists only. Period. There are no independent artists in there. Now, you can point to me and you can say, Big Machine's an independent record label, or Broken Bow, BMG, is an independent They're not. They're not independent record labels. They have checkbooks with endless balances. That automatically does not make them an independent record label. Okay? They've got the budget. You don't. If you want to spend $1 million, that's what it's going to take for you to get any kind of notice whatsoever on the major charts, either the media-based chart or the Billboard chart. But the Billboard Published panel and the media-based published panel, they are monitored. There are computers that are monitoring those stations 24 hours a day. Every time a song is played, it's checked. So they know exactly how many times that song was played or streamed. With Music Row, it's just a program director telling Music Row magazine a number. So the reason that it doesn't work is that sometimes you'll get those reports from your independent radio promoter and it'll show that this station played your record 23 times this week. They didn't. They probably played it 4 times, and it was probably played at anywhere from 12 midnight to 4 in the morning. But what happens is the independent radio promoters talk to the program directors and say, hey, I'm trying to jump up 6 slots this week. I need you to report 32 spins or 27 spins. And that's how that happens. Just because they're telling you your single played 22 times on that station this week doesn't mean that it did, and I can guarantee you that it didn't. Because if you were to count up all of the independent artists that are out there that are paying all the different independent radio promoters, and if all of you artists got together and you put your weekly reports together, I guarantee you there are not enough hours in the day for your single, for the radio station to have played your single that amount of times, and as well as every other independent artist combined. They're telling all those people 22 spins, 25 spins, 30. There's not enough minutes in an hour, and there's not enough hours in a day for that radio station to spin all of the independent artist records that the independent radio promoters are telling you, the artist, that the radio station is playing it. There's just not enough. It's mathematically impossible. So it's a no-win scenario. That's why it never turns to sales. That's why it never turns to bookings. Because you're sitting there as the artist thinking, if my song's playing 30 times a week on this radio station, I should be selling some downloads. I should be growing streams. And it never happens, and it doesn't. It's because it's a lot different when they tell you it's spinning 30 times a week, but it's really spinning 5 times a week, and it's spinning overnight to where it's not in morning drive or midday or afternoon drive or in the evening hours, the peak listening hours for radio. So it's little things like that that I think you need to understand and you need to know. Yeah, it's awesome to look up and see your name on a chart, but if your name on that chart doesn't turn into something that actually means and spells success, then it's not worth it, and you have to be willing to take that want for fame and that want to be known and to be noticed. You have to take that out of the process of trying to become a successful artist and have a successful career in music. Because the things like we're talking about, they don't matter. They don't lead to sales. They don't lead to touring. They don't lead to merch sales. And that's the way you build a successful artist career. I hate to always say that it always comes back to money, but because it does. Because if you don't make the money, you can only do this for so long. I have yet to, well, maybe a couple. But it's oddly enough, I've not ran into very many independent artists that are independently wealthy that can just do this for as long as they want. I've ran into a couple, and they are still where they were when I met them 5 years ago. Still spending money on the same stupid things. if you can't make money in this business, you can only do it for so long, and then you're back to your desk job. You're back selling insurance. Seriously, I could go on and on and on about why not to do this and why not to hire an independent radio promoter. But bottom line is this: stop paying independent radio promoters to market your music to radio stations that report to charts that don't matter. At the end of the day, all these independent radio promoters are doing are preying on your dreams and your desire to be relevant in the industry. When you pull the curtain back and you see the man behind the curtain, you realize that you've paid all this money and you're really still not really relevant because it doesn't matter to anybody. So please, don't waste your money. I hate to see you waste your money. We've talked a lot about this and the fact that you shouldn't do it. But what should you do? Let's talk about that for a second. What if I shouldn't hire an independent radio promoter and I shouldn't work radio, then what should I do? Let's talk about that. Let's go back to what we were talking about live shows and concerts. Let's say you talked to an independent radio promoter and he was going to charge you $5,000 to work your single. $5,000. Don't you think that money would be better spent in calling around the different venues in cities where you want to try to build a fan base and go, look, it would cost me $500 to put this show on. If I have a band and I pay each one of my members $100 and there's 5 of us, wouldn't it be better to pick 10 different venues and call those venues and say, hey, I want to bring my band up and play for free? I'm going to pay my band $500. I can do that 10 times to spend the same amount of money that I would spend on an independent radio promoter. I'm going to tell you, not very many venue owners would turn you down because they don't like to pay. You know that. You guys know that. They don't like to pay because they always figure that the same people are coming anyway, so why pay somebody to be up on stage? There's a lot of local bands that are play for nothing or little of nothing. Call those venue owners and say, here's what I'm trying to do. Send them your social media numbers, which we'll talk about that in a minute. Send them your music. Show them that you're worth putting on that stage, and then telling them that, you know what, I'm going to let you make all the money that night because I'm not going to charge you anything to bring my band in. We're going to play for free. That is so much better utilization of your resources than just about anything else you can do. Because if you want to be successful in this business, you have to build a fan base. And the only way you can build a fan base is to get in front of people. And that's not through radio. I'm talking about getting in front of people, making a connection with people, shaking hands, patting people on the back, thanking them for coming out, and engaging with them. Because if you engage with them, they will engage with you. And that's what makes an artist go to the next level, is engagement. If you do that pretty soon, maybe the next time, the owner's like, you know what? We'll pay you $500 to come back in because everybody really liked you. Then you go back in for $500. And then you start to see people are starting to come in because you're there. Then all of a sudden, that's the leverage. That's the bargaining chip that you have with that venue owner, is that now people want to see you. So then the money starts to go up. Maybe you play the first time for free, the next time for $500, then the next time for $1,000, the next time for $1,500. As you build up that fan base and you build up that demand for people to see you, for people to come to that venue, for people to come to that club that wouldn't have normally come, but they're coming to see you because they've seen you there before. Take that $5,000 and make it work for you, instead of hiring an independent promoter to work for you that's going to get you nowhere except $5,000 less money in your bank account and $5,000 less resources for you to do other things. That's one idea. Another way is social media. Venue owners pay very close attention to social media numbers, and especially social media numbers with artists that do have engaged fan bases. They go look at these things. They look at how many people like what you post on Instagram or Facebook. They look at how many comments you have. If you've got large numbers, the venue owner automatically thinks, well, people will come out to see this person because of their fan base, because they've got an engaged fan base or an engaged social media following. Do the analytics. Show that venue owner that within 90 square miles of his club, you have 331 people that you can let know that you're going to be at this club. Numbers mean something. Numbers matter, and that's what they want to see. They want to know, why should I have you in here other than this local band? Show them why. Give them that reason. It all boils down to one question, and that is why. Want a record label to sign you? They're going to ask why. You want to play this local venue over here? The venue owner's going to ask why. You want to do this over here? Why? Answer that question, and you'll go to the next level. Be prepared for the why. The last thing I want to talk about is Spotify. Spotify numbers mean a lot now. Streaming numbers mean a lot. Unfortunately for us songwriters, it doesn't mean hardly anything, because, I've got a song out there that's got 40 million streams, and I couldn't take two of you to Starbucks with what I made on it. So from that aspect, it doesn't. But from an artist standpoint, and having 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million streams on Spotify, that tells a venue owner, again, that people care about the content and people want to hear the content. That's enough reason for them to bring you in and pay you to play at their venue. Just like independent radio promotions, there are a lot of companies out there that specialize in Spotify playlist promotions for artists. A lot of them are scams, just like independent radio promoters, but there are some very reputable companies out there as well. In my experience, in the artists that I've had a hand in developing, or when I take on an artist development client, some of the ones that I work with, number one, the fee and the charge is a lot less than an independent radio promoter. I think it's a bigger bang for your buck as well. There are companies like Digicen and some other places like that that are extremely reputable. They also have a track record of successfully placing independent artists inside those Discover Weekly playlists. You know, the playlist that you really want to be in to help get discovered, to help you get that 1 million or 2 million, 3 million streams that actually turn into things that are relevant and turn into things that help you achieve success. Because there again, those numbers, streaming numbers, mean something to people that can turn your effort into success, whether it be record labels that you'd like to sign to. They all get the streaming reports. They see who's streaming. They take a look at those things. To venue owners who are looking for acts to come in and play at their club or their venue, but they also want to know that when they pay that artist, that there is a reason to believe that people are going to show up. If you've got strong social media numbers and you've got strong stream count, that tells them that you more than likely probably will pull in an audience. And that means the most, because it all goes back to that thing. They want to make money. And if they feel like they can make money with you as an artist, then it's a no-brainer for them, and that's what they're going to do. So I highly suggest that instead of independent radio promotion, look into something like a Spotify playlist promotion campaign. Look into something like that, because that's going to mean something to you as an artist. That does lead to sales. It leads to large numbers. It leads into growing social media numbers. It actually turns into things that you can take and turn into financial successes. And that's what matters. The key thing here is whether it's independent radio promotion, whether it's hiring a publicist, whether it's hiring a manager, no matter what it is in this business, always keep one thing in mind, and this should really honestly be your guiding rule. Only hire and use your resources on people who have successfully done for someone else what it is that you want them to do for you. And I promise you, if you go and you talk and you get down to brass tacks with some of these independent radio promoters on what other artists they're working with, I guarantee you wouldn't want that artist's career. Now, how a lot of these independent radio promoters get by is They tout the fact that they've worked this major label record, or they worked this Luke Bryan record, or this record over here, or this Keith Urban record. Well, here's how that works. The major labels do not have time and do not care about working small and medium market radio stations. They don't. So their in-house radio promotions team, they don't spend any time focusing on those smaller stations. It's cheaper for them to pay $3,500, $4,000, or $5,000 to get one of these independent radio promoters to talk to the stations about those records. So they subcontract that out to them. So then that independent radio promoter can say, well, I worked this Billy Currington record. Right. They did, but they weren't responsible for it. And any of the success that those artists had certainly didn't come because they were number 5 on the Music Row chart. It comes because they're number 5 on the Music Row chart, and meanwhile, they're number 2 on the Billboard chart or the Media Base chart. There again, Billboard, Media Base are the only 2 charts that matter, and as an independent artist, it's a waste of your time, effort, passion, resources, money, and everything else to spend the kind of money that it takes to compete with the major labels. Because the top 30, 40 spots on the Billboard and Media Base chart are major label artists only, or major label artists, independent artists that are affiliated through a marketing and distribution deal with a major label, okay? And that's where you have to be to turn radio airplay and chart success into financial success and growth for you as an independent artist, is you've got to be in that top 30. You might can extend it to the top 40. But being number 44, 45 on the Billboard chart means nothing, especially if you're an independent artist, because that's as high as you'll ever go, and that doesn't get you anywhere. That doesn't get you the attention of the manager you want. That doesn't get you the attention of the booking agent you want. That doesn't get you the attention of the record label you want. You got to get in the top 30, and you as an independent artist, they're having a party up there, and you didn't get an invite, and you're never going to get one. No matter what you bring to the door, no matter what kind of food, what kind of alcohol, no matter what kind of money you bring to that door, they're having a party that you're not ever going to be invited to. And the sooner that you realize that, the sooner you'll start to look at things and look at ways, outside of the box methods, to, instead of trying to be famous, you then start to focus on things that help you be successful. And everybody wants to be a part of a success story, so the more successful you are, the more attention you're going to bring. You can measure success. You can physically measure it. You cannot measure fame, because it's an illusion. It comes and it goes, but success, if you do it right, you can take step by step by step by step and become more successful, so that if you do slip and fall, you never fall below that last step that you were just at. With fame, you can be all the way up here today and all the way down here tomorrow. Build your career on success and not fame. Guys, thank you so much for watching the weekly vlog this week. I hope you've learned something and can take something away. As always, feel free to put your comments below. Feel free to ask questions. I try to respond to every single one that I get. You can also email me your questions or comments as well. My email address is in the description below. If you liked today's video, be sure and hit the thumbs up button one time. If you didn't like it, hit the thumbs down button twice. And please, love it when you subscribe to the channel. Click the subscribe button below, and that way you can get informed whenever I post new stuff. I'm starting to post a lot of stuff here lately. If you haven't seen them already, you can check out my daily shorts, which is like a 1-minute daily vlog that I post to Instagram every day between 5 and 7 o'clock. It's kind of a fun thing. I'm posting them here on YouTube as well. But feel free to engage. Like I said, comment, ask questions. That's what I want you to do. I'm here to help. So subscribe, like, dislike, share, get in contact. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at @TheSteveFreeman. Until next week, keep asking questions, keep pushing the boundaries, and most importantly, keep being creative. Until next time, see you then.